Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
Content warning ahead. This podcast contains very sensitive topics such as missing persons, unsolved cases, haunted houses, and paranormal activity. These type of topics can contain very upsetting, sensitive details and stories. Please listen responsibly. Welcome to Misty Mysteries, a podcast in the business of ghostly spooks and chilling crimes. I'm your host, Keely, and today is a little bit of a special treat for you. I have a episode from some lovely people in our international portion of the Darkcast Network, the Crime Diver podcast. This will be my episode for the week because I'm currently waiting for some communications from family members of cases I would like to cover, and I want full permission before I release these episodes to you. So please sit back and enjoy these lovely, lovely people who put on a fantastic podcast.
Crime Divers. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
Welcome back.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Crime Divers.
Yay. So Jill, what have you got for us today?
Right, well we are in Northern Ireland.
Oh.
I don't think I've done one in Northern Ireland.
I was actually going to try to do an accent there, but I can't.
No, please don't.
It's half of them are, tell ya.
That's Dublin.
Oh, that's not Northern Ireland.
That's not Northern Ireland.
Thick.
I don't think so anyway. Feck might be. No, Northern Ireland's like Mrs. Brown's Boys.
What's the crack?
What's the crack? No.
I don't know.
Right,
Anyway,
yeah, we're in Northern Ireland. I don't actually think I've done a Northern Ireland one before.
I've done an Ireland or an Northern Ireland, but I'm not sure which.
I think you did Irish. I think you did like Dublin or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely did an Irish one.
Yeah, because you were talking about the Garda.
Yes.
And I think that was a Patreon one actually.
So, anyway, what is it called?
The Deadly Dentist.
Oh.
Yeah, well, you would know if you'd actually listened to me. Because I'm just going to call you out right now. Right, listeners. I watched The Secret on Netflix. I think it's a 4-part drama. And it's based on a true story. And I watched it and it was really good. And I told Laura to watch it. And I told Laura to watch it. And I told Laura to watch it. Did she watch it? No. So I decided to do a case on it instead.
And now she's taken the right away from me to watch it because I can't watch her Netflix anymore.
Yeah, because she's a freeloader.
Yes.
Who was using my Netflix. But then we changed our TV deal and we actually get Netflix for free now, included in our TV deal, and we only get one screen. So I was like, do you know what? Fuck off. You ain't watching my Netflix anymore.
But I could watch it if nobody else was watching it, couldn't I?
But if I do that, then I'll have to let everybody else use it.
Don't tell them.
Let's hope that none of them listen to the podcast then. Because honestly, we only had two screens before, but we had Laura watching it, we had John's dad.
Oh, did I? I don't know he watched it.
Yeah, our 2 kids, both the kids, one of John's friends. So
my daughter was watching it.
Yeah, your daughter was watching it. So everybody had so there was actual times when I went on, or John went on to watch Netflix, and we couldn't watch it because somebody else was watching it.
But
so,
I always said that you should message me and I would come up with it.
Yeah, well, I could tell who it was. It was never you.
Oh, was it never me?
No, it was never you. It was usually the kids, like our kids. It was usually one of them. Because it will say what they're watching it on. So I would know who it was by what they were which device they were watching it on.
Right, okay.
So anyway, so now Laura doesn't have access to Netflix anymore. So
I refuse to pay for it.
Because she refuses to pay for it because she's like got more money than we do, but
I'm a tight arse.
Yeah, she's a tight arse. So anyway, I decided to do a case on it instead.
But what if I want to watch it?
You'll get the 7-day free trial.
I think I've had that before.
Oh, well, I don't know. Not my problem. So, do you want to dive in?
No. Fine.
Right. But well, anyway, just to let everybody know, that it's called The Secret and it's on Netflix and I really recommend watching it. It's got the guy, is it James Nesbitt?
Oh yeah.
He's in it.
He's always in good stuff too.
Well, exactly. That's why I thought you'd like it.
Well, I obviously just forgot about it.
When I went to watch it, I didn't know that it was a true story. I was just looking on Netflix for something to watch. And it came up saying The Secret. And I thought, oh well, Secret, that could be quite good. And it isn't until it I think when it first comes on, it says that it's a true story. And I was like, oh, all right, okay. The first opening scene was of James Nesbitt, and I think he was singing or playing a guitar or or tambourine or something, and I was like, oh my god, I do not like him. And that's how good he is at playing the character, because I really like James Nisbet. I mean, I've watched him in loads of things, and the fact that straight away I was like, oh no, I do not like this guy. This is a bad guy. I knew straight away. So that's how good he was at it. So yeah, it's a really, I would really recommend it. And from researching it now and remembering back to The Secret, it's very true to life.
Right, okay.
Even though it's a dramatisation, it is very true to life.
Cool.
So yeah, so I'd recommend that. So let's go.
Let's go.
So at 1:30 p.m. on Sunday the 19th of May 1991, in a place called Castle Rock in Northern Ireland, police entered the garage to a house and found a man and a woman dead in a car.
Oh.
The woman was lying on her back in the boot, and she had a Walkman beside her, and she had headphones over her ears. She also had 3 framed photos next to her. The man was in the driver's seat, which was fully reclined. His hands were on the steering wheel, and his right leg was like hanging out. The car door wasn't shut properly, so his leg was sort of out, so his foot was on the ground, his leg was hanging out. And there was a hose pipe fitted onto the exhaust, and it extended into the boot.
Lovely.
So, let's rewind to the beginning.
Yes.
Leslie Howell, her maiden name was Clark, had been married to Colin Howell since 1983. She was a nurse and he was a dentist. And when this case began, they had 3 children together. They lived in Coleraine, which is in County Londonderry. They were members of the local Baptist church, with Colin being a lay preacher, which is basically just a preacher who hasn't been formally ordained.
All right. Okay.
Had to look that up because I was like,
Don't know what that means.
yeah, I knew you wouldn't know either, so I thought, I better look it up. And of course, I mean, I'm sure probably loads of our listeners do know, but just in case anybody doesn't.
There you go. There's your lesson for today.
Yeah, so what was it? Every day's a school day.
Exactly.
And Colin also volunteered with the church Sunday school.
Right.
So they described themselves as devout Christians. So Trevor Buchanan was married to Hazel Buchanan, and her maiden name was Elkin. So they moved to Coleraine in 1986. He was a Royal Ulster Constabulary officer, which was the police force in Northern Ireland from 1922 to 2001. But now I think it's just known as the Police Service of Northern Ireland. But when he was in it, he was a Royal Ulster Constabulary officer, but I'm just going to call him a policeman.
I can see why they changed the name of that.
Yeah, but I'm just going to call him a policeman.
Well, yes, exactly. That's fair enough.
So he was a police officer, and Hazel worked as a nursery assistant. And that's where she first met Leslie and Colin, as their 3-year-old daughter attended that nursery. The Buchanans joined the same church as the Howells, and Hazel started helping with the Sunday school. So Trevor and Hazel had 2 children, and he was very much a family man. If he wasn't working, he always had jobs to do around the house, as they entertained often, and they always wanted the house looking immaculate. He would often talk about Hazel and the kids to his work colleagues, and he would do anything for them. They were his world. They had got married when Trevor was 21 and Hazel was 17, and they seemed to be devoted to each other. However,
that's not going to last, is it?
One day in 1990, Hazel Buchanan and Colin Howell chaperoned a Sunday school swimming lesson. They started flirting with each other, and it was clear that they fancied each other.
Oh dear.
And there was an icky bit.
Oh.
That I kind of cringed when I watched it on The Secret, and I can't even remember what it was now. I was like, I'm not even going to write it down, because it was in the research as well, and it was, he said something to her and she said something back to him, and it was like, cringe.
We don't need to know that.
No. So Colin played the guitar at church, so when Hazel decided that she wanted to learn to play, who better to teach her than Colin?
Why not Colin?
Did she really want to learn the guitar?
No, surely not.
So he would go round to her house to give her lessons. And funnily enough, they were always arranged for when her husband Trevor was at work.
Funny that. So I wonder what kind of lessons she actually got.
Not sure it was in guitar anyway.
No.
So it wasn't long before Colin and Hazel were having an affair. They would meet at Hazel's house for sex at night when Trevor was working night shift and her children were asleep. Or they would meet up during the day and have sex in the car. Like there's like a woods, and there was like a car park, at the woods, and they would meet there.
Lovely.
So they were smitten with each other and would spend as much time as they could together. And they even developed like a secret code to contact each other, because obviously we didn't have mobiles then. So they would like phone each other on the landline. So like one would say like for instance, like if Hazel phoned Colin, if the phone stopped ringing, like she'd let it ring once, and if it stopped before he got to it, he would know that it was her and that it was all right for him to phone her back, so that they could talk to each other.
Right.
Because obviously she wouldn't be phoning him while Trevor was in the house, so that would be the code to say it's okay, like you can phone me.
You can phone me.
So what would you do with them mobile phones?
Nice, I know, eh? I bet you that much more affairs happen now.
I know, eh?
Mobile phone, isn't
It's
it?
a lot easier with a mobile phone. So while this affair was going on, Leslie fell pregnant with her and Colin's fourth child.
Oh, right.
But this didn't stop the affair, like between him and Hazel. You know, you'd think, oh, he's pregnant, maybe I should.
Yeah.
No, didn't happen. They carried on. But soon after, Hazel actually became pregnant as well with Colin's child.
Oh, that's getting serious now.
Well, I'm not actually sure if it was definitely Colin's child or she wasn't too sure. So it was like, what happens if it is kind of thing. So Colin told her that he would arrange for her to get an abortion in England because abortion was still illegal in Northern Ireland at that time.
Right.
So Hazel was understandably worried about this, but Colin assured her it would all be fine because after all, he had arranged 3 abortions in the past for Leslie before they were married.
Oh, right. Jeez.
So Hazel was reluctant to commit another sin in their religion, as having the affair was also a sin. But Colin pointed out that having a child out of wedlock and divorcing their partners would also be sins.
Christ.
So, and they would be excommunicated from their church. So that wasn't happening.
Right. Okay.
So
Abortion
you're having an abortion basically. So she agreed, and they both travelled to London for the termination. So
do we know how they got away with that one? Are you going to tell me?
For our listeners who can't see me, I just roll my eyes at her because she does this quite regularly now. I'm literally just about to explain something and she asks the question.
I can't help it.
I know you can, it's okay. Well, it would be a bit rubbish if you weren't, because if you weren't asking questions, then that would probably mean you weren't interested.
Well, exactly, I want to know. Are you going to tell me?
One of them, yeah. So Hazel and Trevor had been arguing quite a lot, and Trevor was just exhausted from it. And when Hazel went to London, she had left him a note just saying, going through a really hard time, don't worry about me, don't try to find me, I'll be back in a few days, love you. And when she got home, he was just so happy to see her that he didn't question like where she'd been or like what she'd been doing.
Right, okay.
But I don't know what Colin's excuse was for him getting away, but Leslie obviously wasn't happy about it because she had recently just given birth to their 4th child. So he just left her with 3 kids and a baby, got away for a couple of days.
Yeah.
So I don't know what excuse she could give for that, but I can imagine she'd be absolutely fuming.
Oh yeah, totally.
And she actually mentioned to the pastor that she was beginning to feel a bit suspicious of the time that Colin and Hazel were spending together. And soon after, unfortunately for the happy couple, they were actually spotted by a member of the church sitting in their cars in the Castle Row Forest Park. So I don't think they were doing anything. I think they were just sitting chatting.
Yeah.
But obviously it looks a bit dodgy, like 2 married people
In a car park.
meeting in their car park, especially ones who are so religious.
Yeah.
And I think it looked a bit dodgy. So the church member reported them, nosy bastard,
Totally.
to the pastor of the church, John Hansford. So he made his way straight to Colin's dental surgery and asked him if he was having an affair. Because you know it's everybody's business.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, is that the pastor's right to go and question that? Like,
Apparently, yeah.
right.
So Colin denied it and seemed stunned that he was even being asked that question. Pastor John wasn't convinced, so he left the dental surgery and headed to Hazel's house. He asked if she was having an affair with Colin, and she said no, she wasn't. They talked about Trevor, her husband, and she mentioned that she wished he was more exciting. Pastor John said, quote, I told her he may not be the exciting husband she wanted, but in terms of faithfulness, he was not to be despised but cherished. End quote. So Hazel drove Pastor John home, but on the way home, to his house, she broke down in tears and told him that she was having an emotional affair with Colin.
Okay.
She was adamant it wasn't physical. It was just, obviously, it must have just been kind of thinking about it, maybe a bit flirting, it wasn't anything.
Right. They hadn't overstepped the mark, which obviously they had, so that's low. So she's now lying.
Yes. I don't
Is that a sin?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. So Pastor John then went over to the Howells' house and he told Leslie what was going on.
But Pastor John, does he got? I thought like when you go and confess to people, is that not like in secret, or is that just a different?
Well, I don't think... I don't know. I think, is that not different? Like, you have to actually go and confess, whereas this was just a conversation. I don't know, because I'm not religious. I don't know how these things work.
No.
But Pastor John obviously was getting involved. He was getting all up in their business.
Yeah, totally was.
And he told Leslie what was going on. And they both waited for Colin to get home from work, and they confronted him, and he admitted the affair.
Christ.
So Colin and Hazel were both told that they had to repent their sins, and they would have to go for counselling, as they were to end the affair and patch up their marriages.
Right.
So they were told to do the Christian thing and stay in the respective marriages.
Yeah.
Divorce was not permitted in the church, so they had no option but to do as they were told, because they were, they wanted to stay in the church,
Right,
so
okay.
they couldn't get divorced.
Right, okay.
So when Hazel confessed to Trevor, he forgave her and decided to fight for their marriage. He acted like a gentleman, and when Colin apologised to him face to face in a meeting with the pastor, he accepted his apology and he would shake his hand.
Oh wow, that's
a better man than a lot of people.
Yeah,
a lot of men.
that's quite...
I wouldn't have been able to do that.
No way.
If a woman came to me and apologised to me for having an affair with my husband, she'd get a punch in the face.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would pretty much be doing that
Yeah,
too.
and I don't condone violence, but I don't think I'd be able to help myself.
No, exactly, because that's awful.
I certainly wouldn't be shaking her hand anyway, put it that way.
Absolutely not.
So Leslie was obviously feeling very insecure, and she wanted to fight for her marriage too. And she started going for sunbed sessions, she was dyeing her hair, she was dieting, going to aerobics class with her friend, and I just thought, that is awful that you feel that you have to do that for your husband.
Yeah.
Like, your husband should love you
no matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, and we could all be better versions of ourselves, but
she's had 4 kids, recently just having the 4th one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, give women a break.
Yeah, she shouldn't have to be doing all that stuff when she's a mother to a newborn.
No, they your bodies change over time. Like, my body's not the same as it was when I first met Justin and then I don't have my daughter. Mm-hmm. And I'm not as light as I used to be, but does Justin love me any less? No.
I hope not.
No, he doesn't. And well, let's be honest. I mean, he ain't no 6-pack man either, is he? I mean, we're both not the same as we were when we first met each other.
Of course, which is the same in most marriages. They don't. People change. People's physically change.
But I think you love people just because you love them, not necessarily.
And the fact that she felt that she had to change that is awful.
Terrible. That's awful.
And Leslie told her friend that Colin had been giving her tablets. I think it was to help her get to sleep. So she told her friend that he was looking after her. Mm-hmm. That's the way it came across. That he was looking after me. He's giving me tablets. He's helping me. Uh-huh. So both couples, they started counselling sessions with the pastor. Both Trevor and Leslie felt like they hadn't been good enough spouses, which, as we just kind of said, that's awful. They shouldn't be feeling like that.
No.
Their spouses cheated on them, and it wasn't their fault.
Exactly.
They're the ones that are in the wrong, so they should never have been feeling like they weren't good enough.
It's not their fault.
So the counselling sessions seemed to be going well, and when the pastor left for India for 6 weeks, he felt confident that the healing process was going really well and heading in the right direction.
I'm assuming that clearly is not going to be the case.
We shall see. So before he left, he spoke to Colin and he told him, Hazel's doing well, she's moved on, and so should you. Mm-hmm. So March 1991 was when Colin and Hazel, they both had their birthdays, and he must have been thinking about her, and he thought, you know what, I'm just going to see if Shaz moved on. Mm-hmm. Just going to check.
All right, okay.
Because that's the right thing to do, isn't it? To actually get in contact with the person that you're meant to be keeping away from.
Oh, no, that just, no.
So he phoned her, and she told him that she would love him until she was old and grey. So obviously she hadn't moved on.
So neither of them had moved on. No. They just made it out like they had moved on just to keep the peace, basically.
Yeah, basically. So this is when the affair resumed.
Right.
But this time round, they weren't only deceiving their families, they were betraying the church now, because obviously they were, after all this counsel with Pastor John and all the rest of it. So as I said before, Colin was giving Leslie tablets, which I think must have been sleeping pills. As once she was asleep, he would sneak out the house, and he would either jog or cycle through the woods, and he would enter Hazel's garden by her back gate. Obviously, they only did this when Trevor was working nights.
I was just going to say, that's an awful brave thing to do.
I told you that they should meet up at her house when Trevor was working.
I meant at night time, though. I wasn't expecting.
Well, I did actually say it.
Oh, okay.
So you obviously weren't listening properly.
Must have missed that bit.
Wake up. They used to have sex when Trevor was working at night time when our kids were asleep.
Oh, right.
I did say that.
Okay, sorry.
So they only did it when Trevor was working nights, so they knew that obviously they weren't going to be disturbed. Mm-hmm. Just hope our children don't wake up.
No, yeah, that was...
So Trevor seemed to have completely forgiven Hazel. Like, if he ever spoke about the affair to anyone else, he would, like, downplay it, and he would say things like, well, I'm not perfect either, you know, and try to kind of justify it in a way, and I'm like, no, mate.
Letting her off the hook there, no.
No,
There's no justifying that.
But Leslie wasn't as forgiving, and I'm not surprised, as this wasn't the first time that Colin had cheated on her.
Oh.
In 1989, he'd had an affair with an old classmate from university, so she's probably never trusted him since then.
No, probably not.
And like every time Colin left the house, like Leslie would have it in the back of her mind that he was going to meet Hazel. So of course this caused arguments, and understandably, like Leslie just couldn't let it go.
No,
I didn't blame her.
No, I don't blame her.
If I knew that my husband had cheated on me, I would never be able to let that go. I mean, you can forgive somebody, but
it still
you
stays
didn't forget.
Like,
you
yeah,
didn't forget.
You don't forget. That's it. You can try and forgive and move on with life, but it'll always be with you. And especially if they've done it multiple times, like not even just once, like it wasn't just a one-off, like they've done it more with different people, then you're never going to trust them fully. So can you blame her?
Exactly. I mean, it'd be exactly the same. I'll hold my hands up, I'd be exactly the same. But what annoys me is, like, you're saying that you're a devout Christian, and yet you're cheating on your wife more than once. No.
So now you're not.
How are you a devout Christian? No.
Definitely not.
You just like to try and look like one.
Yes.
So one day they started arguing because Colin had been late home. Leslie decided to go for a bath, and she took the cassette player into the bathroom with her. So he was so angry with her about accusing him of still having an affair that he actually considered electrocuting her in the bath.
Okay.
And I did it in a couple of sources it was different, and a source I read that he did actually put it in the bath. But this particular one that I was kind of coming from said that he flicked the cord across her back to let her know that he could have done it if he wanted to.
Right, okay.
And then he just dropped the plug on the floor and then just walked out.
Right.
So Leslie later called a friend and told her that what had happened. And she said, I'm telling you just in case something happens to me. So Leslie was really close to her dad, Harry Clark, and she told him that she thought Colin and Hazel had started up the affair again. So he was like, right, just leave. You know, you're worth more than that. You know, you shouldn't be putting up with it. But she was so concerned about the church. So this is all like the centre of it is the church.
Like what they would think.
Yeah. But Harry was like, who gives a shit about the church? You know, you do you. Like,
you're unhappy. Your husband's been cheating on you. You know.
Yeah. If you leave, then you leave. And he's like, I'll give you money, so that you know, like you don't have to worry about money. I've got money. I'll give you money, so you so she could live independently with the kids.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have to rely on him for anything.
Yeah.
But she didn't. She stayed. And unfortunately, not long after that, on the 7th of May 1991, Leslie's dad, Harry, died.
Oh.
And he was actually staying at the Howells house at the time of his death.
Oh, right.
Like he just collapsed, but no post-mortem was carried out, and the cause of death was given as heart failure. And like, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but he wasn't an old man. I mean, I think by looking at him, maybe 50s or something like that, and he's just dropped down dead. Why did they not do a post-mortem?
Yeah, because you think they would want to try and find out the cause of that.
Yeah, and I will say, as I said, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but her brother actually has his suspicions about that it could have been Colin that's done something. But as I said, there's been
it's not more than what I thought of.
I thought of her brother, so I mean it's not. I mean everybody can have their thoughts, obviously. I mean he might well have just had heart failure or whatever. But I just thought it was strange that they didn't do a post-mortem.
Yeah.
But Leslie obviously was like absolutely devastated, and a few days after her death, she even said to Colin that she would be better off dead. She was that low because, I mean, it's one thing grieving for your dad, but also having the troubles in your relationship at the same time, and he probably wasn't there for her.
No, probably
he's off having an affair. So
yeah, exactly, and she's got 4 kids, and
so you can imagine how she'd be feeling.
Yeah, totally.
So on the morning of the 19th of May, 1991. Colin phoned one of the church elders, Jim Flanagan. He told him that Leslie had gone off last night and hadn't came home. So he was worried and asked him to come over. So Jim arrived. Colin had his 6-month-old baby on his knee and the 3 older kids were playing in another room. He told Jim that he had seen Hazel driving off with Trevor Buchanan the night before, and he showed him a note that he had found from Leslie.
Right.
It read, "Dear Colin, I am just trying to go to sleep now. How long, I don't know. Thank you for your help over the past few days and for the good times in our marriage. I don't know what to say to you because I don't know how I feel. But I've seen that life goes on after a few weeks of pain, and let's face it, Colin, I am nothing in comparison to what you lost and the one you loved a while back. If I wake up in the morning, just let this be your secret. All my love, Leslie.
Oh, okay.
We'll kind of touch on that later.
Yeah.
So whilst talking to Jim about where Leslie could have gone, Colin asked Jim to check Leslie's dad's house. Because obviously she was grieving and thought it would be quite possible that that's where she could have went. Just for a bit of time. Whatever. So he had the 4 children to look after, which is why he hadn't checked himself.
Right.
So of course Jim obliged, and when he came back a while later, he was like, "No, there's no sign of Leslie or Trevor." One thing I did notice though, I don't know what was going on with Hazel at this point. Like, I don't know if she reported Trevor missing or...
Yeah.
I've only kind of seen like Colin's side of it. So Colin then asked Jim again at 12:30 to check Leslie's dad's house, and this time he would give him the keys, because obviously the first time he just kind of went and knocked at the door and that. So he's like, right, here's the keys, so he could have a proper look. So Jim's like, right, okay. So he asked the police officer, and he was also like a member of the church and like a friend, but he was also a police officer. So I don't think he asked him in the capacity of a police officer.
Just as a friend.
As a friend.
Happened to be a police officer.
Yeah. He called David Green to go with him. So they got to the house about 1:20pm and entered the house for a look around. David had a look upstairs and Jim had a look downstairs. They didn't see anything untoward in the house, so Jim went to the garage. So he opened the door and saw the Howells car had been reversed in, and he could just see a man slumped over in the front seat. So Jim shouted for David, and he ran in and he saw that it was Trevor Buchanan sitting in the front seat of the car. He checked for a pulse, but 32-year-old Trevor was unfortunately dead. So then they looked around him and they saw 31-year-old Leslie Howell lying in the boot, wearing her headphones, with family photos around her, and found that she too was gone. So one photo was of Leslie and her mum, another was of Leslie, her brother and her dad, and the other was of Leslie and Colin. Does that sound a bit... Anything sound a bit strange about that?
Where's the kids?
Exactly, that was my bit. Where's the kids?
I was expecting you to say the kids' photos more than anything.
No. So officers were called to the scene. So this is the start of our story, when the officers went in and found them. So, and to them, it was an open and shut case.
They'd committed suicide.
Yeah, they could smell the exhaust fumes. The car key was turned on in the ignition. A layer of soot covered the boot, explained by the hose pipe of a Hoover that was next to Leslie's head and connected to the exhaust. They knew of Colin and Hazel's affair, so they assumed that they had a suicide pact.
See, that I would have more likely said it would have been the other way around, like with the two that were having their affair, because they couldn't be together, and maybe they just decided to do that. Like that just alarm bells ringing in my head. Like, why are the two innocent partners are the ones that are dead?
Well, I was just about to say.
Well, yeah.
I was actually in the middle of that sentence there when you just fired it.
Well, that wouldn't be me if I didn't.
Well, they assumed that they had a suicide pact as they were unable to cope with the betrayal of their spouses and the shame that brought in such a God-fearing community that they decided to take their own lives.
I just don't like. I just wouldn't believe that. I would.
You can't say that.
But I am. In my opinion.
No, I think in your opinion, yeah, because we're doing a true crime case. Hazel and not Hazel, sorry, Colin. No, wrong one.
Trevor.
Leslie and Trevor had been consoling each other, not in a bad way, but they had been like sort of talking and everything like that, kind of consoling each other.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's what's the word?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's not unbelievable. I do think that they should investigate it, but I don't think it's unbelievable that my husband's having an affair with your wife. We can't live with the shame, so we're going to take our own lives. I don't see why that would be unbelievable. But we're sceptical.
Yes, I know. I can't.
Yeah, so that's what they thought. So when and remember, when police visited Colin to give them news, he showed them that suicide note.
True.
That Leslie had already written.
Easily could have written it myself.
Leslie wrote it.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, Leslie. So she did write it.
Oh, she did write it.
Yeah, so there's a suicide note. To me, I think that's totally understandable why they would think that, but I still think they should investigate it. And also as well, it was confirmed to so it was pointing to suicide. So this was confirmed to them when the medical examiner reported that their deaths had been caused by carbon monoxide poisoning. So obviously that's...
The only other question I have, as you said at the start, that obviously now Trevor's leg was hanging out the door. So the door of the car was open, so how did the gas not escape from the doors and then it didn't...
Well, it would have, but the garage door was shut.
Oh, so it would have filled the garage.
So it would have filled the garage up, yeah.
Right, I was just thinking of it being in the car.
No, it would have filled the garage up, yeah.
Right, okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, so that's why, to me, I can totally see it. I think you're looking at it as a... I think in the time, I don't think you would be so quick. I think you'd maybe have suspicions, but I don't think you'd be so quick.
True.
To be like, really? Because you just do see like two people who are devastated. Right. There's a suicide note. They've died by the poisoning.
Yeah, true.
So well, we'll get on to it. But like it was, they could have got away with it. Put it that way. But we'll get on to that. So Colin and Hazel stopped their affair after their partner's death. But a few months later, they started up again. I think they were just trying to make it, like, we better not be together because then that's going to look really suspicious. Yeah. So we'll stop. But a few months later, they started up again, and they were together for 5 years before splitting up in 1996. So a cardan?
So two people died over fucking a 5-year relationship.
Yeah. According to an article that I read on the Sunday World, Hazel's Christian guilt meant that Colin could only have sex with her after he had sedated her with drugs from his dental surgery. So she felt that guilty that that's the only way she could have sex with him.
Lovely.
And I did see, as I said, I watched The Secret, which was a dramatisation, and that did touch quite a lot on how guilty Hazel was feeling. So throughout their, obviously when you're just reading reports and things like that, you don't get all that kind of stuff, but it did touch on sort of how it affected their relationship was because of her guilt.
Right, okay.
So it is quite understandable that that's why it didn't last, because the guilt was too much. No sympathy for her, though.
No.
I kind of thought about that, I thought, I hope that doesn't sound like we're making up excuses for her.
Totally not.
So one night, Colin had organised a get-together at his house for the Barn Christian Fellowship, and a woman called Kyle Jorgensen turned up with her 2 young children. She was American, and her marriage had broken down, and she'd went to Northern Ireland to study at the University of Ulster. So they, got together, blah, blah, blah. They married in 1997, and they went on to have 3 children together. So between the 2 of them, they had 9 children.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. It's like the Brady Bunch.
So after splitting up with Colin, Hazel started to see a guy that she had dated 20 years earlier, Trevor Macaulay, but she ended up cheating on him.
Another Trevor?
Yeah. She ended up cheating on him with a guy called David Stewart that she met at the gym that Trevor actually paid her membership for. I thought that was a bit cheeky.
Oh, that is very cheeky.
Anyway, she married David.
Well, imagine feeling that guilty, but she could still go and have an affair with somebody else.
Yeah, but I think it was just knowing that they weren't the ones that killed them.
Well, yeah, that's true.
So anyway, she married David and became Hazel Stewart in 2005. So one day in 2007, remember this happened way back in 91, was it? So May 2007, the phone rang in the Howells house. Colin answered it, and it was the British Embassy in Moscow. So they told him that his eldest son Matthew had died. Matthew was 22 and he was on a placement in St. Petersburg as part of his undergraduate language course at St. Andrews.
All right.
And I don't quite, I think, well, it's basically what it said was that he'd lost his grip on a stairwell and he fell 4 floors in an apartment block on a concrete surface below and died instantly. So I think, if you think like apartment buildings, maybe got railings, and he's been on the railing and he's fell or something. I'm not quite sure how it happened, but apparently his best friend saw it happen. Can you imagine that? Oh.
No.
So obviously, Colin was absolutely devastated by his son's death, and he saw this as a punishment from God.
Right.
So he struggled for just over a year and a half, and then one day his wife Kyle phoned the church elders and asked them to come to her and Colin's house.
Okay.
So the church elders were actually used to being called to the Howells house as Colin had been unfaithful to Kyle several times.
Oh, so neither of them had like changed their spots, had they?
No.
They were both still cheating on their partners.
And each time he would confess to the elders, as if that's going to make it better. Like, just stop doing it, then you won't have to confess.
Yeah, exactly.
So they were like, oh, all right, here we go, he's cheated again.
Yeah.
So the elders arrived, and Colin confessed that he had lost hundreds of thousands of pounds on a scam, which he had expected to make between 6 and 8 million from.
Right.
Gullible as fuck is what you're going to think.
I'm gonna say, like,
I know what you're like at the best of times.
Yeah.
You just see people as gullible. So, basically, the gist of it is that he was conned by a man in the Philippines that he'd never met. He was told that there were projects going on in the Philippines trying to recover hidden gold that had been stashed away by the Japanese at the end of World War II.
Fuck's sake, right?
So he made an initial investment from selling his 2 dental practices, but after 6 months and no sign of the missing treasure, he was told that the gold was hidden in underground bunkers, but the costs involved in bringing the bars to the surface were higher than originally anticipated. I mean, what the fuck? So,
I have no words.
he was told that they had been booby-trapped, the bunkers filled with poisonous gas, and more money was needed. So he was told that there was only 40 feet of tunnel to dig to get to the gold. So that's all that was left. So we're nearly there. You know, we just need a little bit more.
Yeah.
But he had invested £353,000 by now and had no money left.
Wow.
So he decided to approach some of his friends to see if anybody would be interested in backing the project. So I read an article in the Belfast Telegraph, so I'm going to quote from there. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that Colin must have gotten this person to speak to one of the people involved in the con. So he's obviously like, well, didn't believe me, here's the guy. Mm-hmm. And this is what his friend was saying about the guy, or whatever. Or the situation. So, quote, I thought to myself, are these people wise? I know, that's totally an Irish thing to say. Are you wise? Are they crazy? But they were dead serious. There was all this hidden gold, but they had put explosive devices around it. There was gas which had to be neutralised. It was all heavily guarded. Howell told me that he had put in 100,000 and he was going to take out between 6 and 8 million. I don't know why he only said that he invested 100,000 because it had been 353.
Yeah.
Anyway, he told me the Lord's hand was in. He told me the Lord's hand was in this, and they were going to get money for doing the Lord's work, funding some sort of missionary exercise. I just chuckled and laughed to myself.
Yeah.
I asked Colin, who owns this gold? Like, was it the Japanese? Which government? Was it the landowner who owned the titles to the gold?
Yeah.
And he seemed to be taken aback because it was obvious he hadn't really thought about it.
Uh-huh.
So basically, Colin just threw hundreds of thousands of pounds into a get-rich-quick scheme without even looking into it properly. With his friends obviously being sceptical about the investment, Colin decided to travel to Manila in the Philippines, and he was confident he would get some of the gold because he was like, right, I'm just going to go and sort this out for myself. I'm going to go and get my money. So the con man must have had 2 boxes delivered to Colin's hotel in Manila.
Right.
As he was expecting these boxes, and he was expecting in these boxes to see 2 bars of gold when he opened them. But all that was in the boxes were a couple of silver dollars and old banknotes worth $30 US. So he'd be well and truly conned. So having lost all his money, he owed a lot of money to his patients and to the revenue. So Colin saw losing that money as a punishment from God. So that's what he had to confess that to the elders.
Right.
Then that's not all he's confessed.
Jesus.
Then he confessed that he had been molesting patients at his dental practice between the years of 1998 and 2008, as he just couldn't control his sexual urges. So he was putting them out with the gas and molesting them.
Oh, God.
And then he made his final confession. Do you know what this is going to be?
That he killed his wife and Trevor.
How did you know that?
I mean, that's just a wild guess, to be honest.
Yeah. He killed his wife Leslie Howell and Hazel's husband Trevor Buchanan. He had actually already told Kyle, his wife, about the murders way back when they had their first child together.
And she still wanted to be with him.
So I think it was maybe about 11 years that she'd known about it for.
Wow.
But he had persuaded her to keep quiet for the sake of the children.
Ugh. But you must be, I would be like totally...
What, am I going to be next?
Yeah, like totally on edge all the time, like wondering if I do something wrong or if I say something wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why she just allowed him to cheat all the time, because she just worried that
Yeah, probably.
if she did anything, he might just kill her.
Yeah, probably. She was probably scared. Yeah, so she'd known about it for all those years. But, however, in late 2008, Colin admitted to her that he'd had another affair after his son Matthew had died. So she threw him out. She's like, right, okay, that's it. You know, and the following month she told him she's had enough and it was time for him to confess everything to the elders and of course the police.
See, I wouldn't have had the confidence, because he might have tried to kill her to shut her up.
Well, good on her.
I mean, good on her for doing that, yeah, totally.
But I get what you mean, like,
Yeah.
but I think she must have just got that, she just had enough basically, she just snapped and she was like, nah. And she said to him, quote, "The truth will set you free. There's grace, there is grace. The Lord has given you another chance. If you love your life, you won't lose it," end quote.
How is he not going to lose it?
No, and then she called the elders. So, what actually happened to Leslie and Trevor?
Yes.
I'm going to tell you.
Good.
Because we do actually know.
Okay.
So, Colin and Hazel had one of their usual meetups in the woods one day, and they were talking about how they wanted to be together, but of course, divorce wasn't an option because that wasn't allowed in the church. So, Colin told Hazel that he had thought of a way to get rid of their spouses so they could be together properly. He was going to kill them. And I think what actually gave him the idea was the fact that his wife Leslie had said that she'd be better off dead. And I think that's put the idea of how to do it into his head. So he told Hazel that he was going to kill them. So he handed her a packet of Temazepam and told her to crush them up and put them in Trevor's dinner on the 18th of May. So Trevor was a big fit man, so Colin needed him to be unconscious. And then all Hazel had to do after that was just to open the garage door, move Trevor's car out of the way, and that's it. That's all you have to do.
Right, okay.
So I was like, eat it.
Yeah.
As for Colin, one of his son's birthdays was coming up, so he told Leslie on the night of the 18th that he was going into the garage to set up their son's gift, which was a slide, so he was going into the garage to put it together. And I'm actually not sure. I think it could have been his birthday that day or the following day. It was like...
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. So while he's building this slide, he cut up a baby bottle and he adapted it to fit over the exhaust pipe of the car. And then he went into the living room where Leslie had fell asleep on the couch. So he went through the living room with a hose pipe connected to the bottle, and he placed the hose pipe next to her face and like pulled the covers over her head.
Right.
And then he went in the garage, connected the hose pipe to the car exhaust, turned the ignition on of the car.
Wow.
So he went back and then he watched through the partially open door of the living room to make sure that the hose pipe didn't fall. And as the exhaust, so he just watched this. As the exhaust fumes were blowing on her face, like Leslie started to stir. So Colin thought, shit, she's going to wake up. So he like just took a deep breath, ran into the room and like pulled the covers up over and held the covers over her face.
Wow.
With the hose pipe still underneath. And as he did, she called out for her eldest son, Matthew, who was only 6 at the time. And that was her last words. She was calling out for Matthew.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
I know. And I'm thinking... Because I kind of thought, why Matthew? But I think maybe because he was the oldest.
Yeah.
She was thinking maybe he could come and help her. Yeah. And I thought, that's awful.
That is awful.
And that just makes it even more, like, as well, why was there not photos of the kids? That, you know, you can see how devoted she is to the kids. Why were the kids not there? But anyway, I've just jumped ahead there. So he then, Colin held the covers over Leslie until she was lifeless. And then he got her dressed because she'd fell asleep I think she was actually sleeping on the couch. I think they were obviously having their arguments and whatnot. So she had the covers were there. I think she had her nightie or pyjamas on or whatever. So he got her dressed and then he carried her out to the garage and put her in the boot of the car. He took the hose pipe and the bottle off and threw them in the car as well. He put a white sheet over her body and then just threw a bike on top of her.
Oh, lovely.
So he then made a last minute decision to put her headphones on her, as she did like to fall asleep listening to music, so it would be believable that she would have the headphones on while she was taking her own life. And he put the photographs in as well. But as I said, like you would have thought He obviously didn't even think.
Yeah.
There was even a photo of him. I thought, what?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So by now it was about 1 a.m. So Colin phoned Hazel, let it ring once, wait for her to phone back. She phoned him right back, and he said he'd finished with Leslie and he was on his way to her house, and to check that she had given Trevor. So she opened the garage door, moved the car, so it was ready just for him to drive, for Colin to drive in with his car. So he drove in, he opened the boot to get the hose in the bottle, and gestured to gestured to the sheet and went, "There's Leslie." I asked Hazel if Trevor was definitely asleep, and she said he was, so Colin attached the bottle and the hose to the exhaust, led it through the kitchen, along to the bedroom. He put the hose next to Trevor's head, and then went back to the car to turn the ignition on. So, from my research I didn't see it, but on The Secret, I think the children were in the house, so because you saw Hazel getting a towel and putting it up against her kids' doors, so obviously the fumes wouldn't go through there. So I was like, was that right or not? So I'm not too sure, but I thought, surely if they were going to do that, they would have had the kids out of the house.
Maybe if they didn't have anywhere to go, it'd be like, well, why were the kids away? I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably had no choice just to get it done.
So, like Leslie, Trevor started to stir. So Colin had to go back into the bedroom and get on top of Trevor to hold him down. And there was a bit of a struggle, but eventually the fumes were obviously too much, and Trevor died. So once Trevor was dead, Colin dragged his body to the garage and put him in the boot beside Leslie, and then put the sheet and bike on top of them. He told Hazel to get rid of the bottle and the hosepipe by burning them, and told her to tidy up the bedroom and everything like that. So Colin then drove to Leslie's dad's house, reversed into the garage. He wore surgical gloves, and he pulled Trevor's body out of the boot and put him in the driver's seat to make it look like he was the one who had turned the ignition on. Now, I'll get on to this later, but I think the reason why his foot was hanging out was because he never put the chair back. He said the chair was reclined, but it wasn't pulled back, so his legs would have been too long.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he was put in the driver's seat to make it look like he's turned the ignition on.
Yeah.
And then he went back to the boot, arranged the photos around Leslie, and put her headphones on, which were playing her favourite gospel music. Which I kind of thought, well, that was just a bit stupid anyway, because on Walkmans, once it gets to the end of the tape, it would have stopped.
Yeah.
So, you can understand if the police were going to find her in time. Oh, she's just fell asleep listening to her gospel music, but by the time they found her, it wouldn't be playing anymore.
No.
Or the batteries would have run out.
Yeah, quite well.
So this time, Colin attached a vacuum hose to the exhaust and put it in the boot, and then closed the boot door to keep it in place. Then he turned the car on. He put the white sheet and the gloves in a black bin bag and used the bike that he had brought to cycle home. Once home, he burned the evidence, and then he phoned Hazel to tell her that everyone's fine, all done, everyone went smoothly.
Yeah.
So that's basically what happened.
Wow.
So, of course, Colin was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder, and in December 2009, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years. He also pled guilty to molesting patients over 10 years, and he was stripped of his NHS pension of $590,000, which he would have received when he retired.
Right.
And he had another 5.5 years added onto his sentence. When Hazel was arrested, she said, quote, "He controlled me. He decided and he planned this. I want to say sorry to Trevor's family. My guilt was horrendous. My shame. I hated him. He was capable of doing everything. I was scared for my children. I don't know if it was love or fear. He had control over me. It was like I was his little robot," end quote. I just think she was just trying to get out of it. So Hazel was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 18 years for her role in the murders. So the police were criticised for overlooking some seemingly obvious clues and just assumed that Hazel and Trevor took... I put Hazel and Trevor. Leslie and Trevor took their own lives. So these included the fact that Colin told them to look at Leslie's dad's garage, but he was never asked why he thought they would be there. I mean, it's kind of said maybe she's at his house, because she's grieving about, but never
But the
garage. Why are you saying check the garage? So that's a bit suspicious.
Yeah.
2 of the 3 photos beside Leslie were actually facing away from her. So surely she would be looking at them while she was falling asleep. And of course there was no photos of her kids.
Yeah. Which seemed unusual.
So I think he's just kind of like chucked the photos down and just not bothered how they were placed.
Yeah.
Trevor was much taller than Colin, so the driver's seat of the car would have been too far forward for Trevor to fit in, as I said.
Yeah.
Leslie's trainers weren't on properly. Apparently Colin couldn't get them on. That's why. But the officer didn't think it was strange that her feet were only half in her shoes.
Yeah,
I mean, like, if she'd came there voluntarily, she would have put her shoes on, wouldn't she?
Oh, she'd have thought so, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, according to them, they think it's a suicide pact, so she probably would have been sitting in the front of the car with Trevor driving.
Yeah.
She would have had her shoes on properly.
Oh, yeah, I thought so, yeah.
Experts say that if this was a joint suicide pact, then Leslie would Leslie would most likely have been in the passenger seat. So why... And they would be sitting side by side. So why... Nobody questioned why she was in the boot.
Yeah. That's a bit stupid.
Yeah, like, why was she in the boot? And
it wasn't like Trevor would have killed her and then killed himself, because if it was supposed to be a suicide pact, you're right, it would be done at the same time.
Yeah.
They would be in the front together, you would have thought.
You would have thought. I mean, it's not...
It's not...
Not 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that would happen every time, but I mean, it would be more likely than her being in the boot.
Yeah, it seems a bit strange that she'd be in the boot, but that wasn't questioned. Trevor actually had injuries. So there were post-mortem photos that showed injuries to his mouth and nose and what appeared to be blood coming from the back of his head. Colin told the police that they'd had a minor row earlier that day, so that's where the injuries must have came from, and they just accepted that version of events. And Colin, he had a gash to his forehead from the struggle with Trevor. But he told the police that he'd bumped his head, and again they accepted that. I don't know why I never said that came from the struggle with Trevor, but he'd said... Yeah. But no, you just said he banged his head. It just
does seem like the fact that they've had a bit of an altercation early in the day... Would that not raise alarm bells?
You would think?
I would think so.
So even though the police had been told that Colin had been given Leslie pills, and they were told about the electric cable incident, they didn't investigate further. Like, they knew about those things, so... Right. And police knew that Colin had financial issues, but didn't think anything was suspicious when he claimed Leslie's life insurance policy.
Okay.
And I actually did look into that, because I was like, can you claim life insurance for suicide? But you actually can. In some cases you can. And he obviously could, so he claimed something like 400,000 or something. And lastly, the suicide note. Colin saved this note from a previous suicide attempt. Because if you think about it, right, so I couldn't find much about it, but it seems like with the way it was worded about not knowing if she would wake up, that she had written that note and she'd woken up the following day. So when she had planned on doing it, she had actually woken up the next same day.
Yeah.
But Colin's obviously seen the note and he's kept it, and he's thought, oh, that'll come in handy.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like, but the note wouldn't have made sense for her to the police. Because, like she'd said, if I wake up in the morning, just let it be our secret. But she wasn't at home.
No, that's right, yeah.
She was in a car.
Yeah.
So
the fact
that wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, you're right.
So that doesn't add up with her being at home. Like, because as I said, like, I think the way it has been, she has been like, do you know what, I'm just going to, do whatever, take pills or whatever she did. Fall asleep, if I wake up, right, okay, it's just our secret. If I don't wake up, well, there's a suicide note.
Yeah. But yeah, she wasn't home. So
but she wasn't at home,
the wording of that's totally...
The wording's totally off.
It doesn't fit with what's actually happened,
But yeah, the police didn't question it. And so Colin's wife, Kyle, she didn't face any charges.
Right.
She filed for divorce and she went back to live in Florida. Out of Colin's remaining children, only one of them has stayed in contact with him because she thinks that he's genuinely remorseful for what he did. Okay.
No.
If that's what she wants to think, then that's...
I mean, people can...
Whatever kind of works for you, I think.
Maybe she needed that to make peace with it or something.
Exactly.
So yeah.
But Hazel's two children and her husband have stood by her and believed that Colin coerced her into her part. So they're like totally fine with her. Which, again, everybody's entitled to it, but she killed your dad.
Yeah. I mean, it must be quite difficult. But then they obviously genuinely believe that maybe she didn't, and she just, obviously, she did help,
I mean, she didn't actually do it.
No, but she did.
Well, she did help.
Yeah, she gave him sleeping tablets or whatever.
That's true. And she let Colin in, and
so she didn't take part in it. She was an accomplice to it. But that's what they say. Even if you didn't physically do the act, you're still a part of it. You're
Yeah,
still,
of course.
still-
I mean, she was totally, fully a part of it.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, she had time to stop it. She had plenty of time to stop it. She could have said something. She could have went to the police. She could, even after it happened, she still could have you know, she still could have owned up to it. But I just think, sorry, you know, I know we're not supposed to judge people, but when it comes to murderers, I don't really care. I think that she did it. She felt guilty about it. Yeah, she probably did, but she needs to take her punishment for it, and she's in jail. So she's in prison. So's he. So
yeah, I mean, obviously justice was done eventually.
yeah, after I think it was like 19 years or something like that. It was, and the other thing is, I mean, I know it's good that it happened, so we got justice for them, but they could have got away with that. It was only because Colin confessed.
Well, yeah, like if
Because it was ruled as a suicide.
Yeah, that's it.
So if he hadn't have confessed,
so that just shows you like how much guilt can get to you.
well,
Like-
I think because he thinks that he was getting punished.
Yeah.
Because his son died, he got conned out all that money, so that was his punishment for killing his wife and Trevor.
But yeah, it just shows you might think you can get away with it, and maybe you can, but it's ultimately it can be your own self.
You have to live with that for the rest of your life.
Conscience that can actually like get you found out in the end because you just can't live with it.
Well, he definitely wasn't a devout Christian anyway. All he did was cheat and murder
Exactly.
and lie.
I know. And why? You know, you always have to ask the question why. I mean, I know obviously like they obviously had affairs and they shouldn't have because of the church and etc. But again, as we always say, murder's not the answer.
No,
Either,
definitely not.
you know, deal with your feelings and stop having an affair, or leave the church.
Yeah.
And then go and be together.
Exactly.
Like, would that not have been better? Like, even if you had to move away out of the town.
Go and join another church.
Oh yeah.
Don't tell them.
There's other churches out there that aren't as well. Like they wouldn't chuck you out for it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's just. I mean, when you're not religious, it's hard to understand other people when people are that religious. And you know, I don't want to disrespect anybody's religion and stuff, but if I'm not. I'm talking about them, those two in particular. If that's not allowed in the church, then neither's murder.
Yeah. Well,
So
exactly.
none of it was right. So
No.
why not do the better thing and not kill anybody and just get divorced and move away?
Well, exactly.
You know?
Surely that's far better
Yeah.
than killing anybody.
But obviously, murderers are stupid.
Well, we always say that.
So thank you to everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. If you'd like to get in contact with us or follow us on our social media, we are on Instagram and Twitter at crime_divers_pod. You can email us at crime_divers_pod@outlook.com. We're on YouTube, and that's Crime Divers Podcast, and TikTok is also Crime Divers Podcast. If you would like to financially support the show, you could go to www.buymeacoffee.com/crimedivers and make a one-off donation. Our Patreon is patreon.com/crimedivers. We have 3 tiers, which is £1, £3 or £5, and you get bonus episodes, early access to episodes, and ad-free episodes.
And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review.